All right. Welcome, everyone. Today's Webmaster Central Office Hours Hangout. Today we have a bunch of special guests from Switzerland that also we thought we would do the whole thing. Sorry, I have to keep muting you. Actually, maybe we'll do it in English because maybe not everyone here speaks German. Do you want to introduce yourself briefly?
Yes, my name is Thierry. I do SEO at Scouts24 Switzerland for demoscouts24.ch.
And my name is Toby. I'm head of SEO of Blick.ch, which is a Swiss publisher and probably the biggest one in SEO.
I'm Eric. I do SEO and paid search at a small agency.
I'm Sandra. I'm from Bern, and I'm working for Stampfli. It's an old traditional print enterprise, but we're transforming into digital. So I'm leading all the digital stuff, marketing and sales, software, websites, and I'm doing SEO.
My name is Stefan. I'm SEO team leader at Scout24, working together with Thierry. And yeah, we're taking care about the Auto Scout, Immo Scout websites, and of course, Motor Scout.
Also the Scout group. Yeah. Hi, I'm Martin. I work with John here at Google. I am specializing on JavaScript rendering and JavaScript SEO and PWAs and stuff. So yeah, I'm here to answer questions in that direction if you have any.
Awesome. Cool. Do any of you who are live here in the Hangout want to say hi briefly?
Yeah, my name is Imad. I'm from Canada. First time joining here. I got 2 questions, John. I've been trying to figure out SEO for the last 4 years. Finally did figure it out, but need to have a few questions.
Cool. All right. Any of the others want to say something? No.
Hi, I'm Maike from Munich, and I worked small company selling culinary events. And I joined the English Webmaster Hangout because the next German one is too far in the future. So, hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hello.
Okay, and someone joining from Vietnam. Drop the message. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So I guess we can get started. Maybe we'll just start here with the room. What's on your mind? What kind of questions have you come with?
Last time in the German Hangout, I already had a question regarding the image sitemaps. And if it's fine for starters, just let me know. And my question would be like, for which websites does it make sense? Where could be the added value for the webmasters? And does it still need those kind of sitemaps today? Or is Google already smart enough to find the image URL via the respective source code on the pages?
We do find it with the source code, but the image sitemaps helps us a little bit to understand that it's really like something that you want to have indexed. So I would see it more as a decision on your side. Do you want to have your images indexed or not? And for some websites, the images are not that critical because it's like just decorative or used more for design. But for others, maybe people are searching using image search and they'd like to find something on your website.
Okay.
So I think it's something that a lot of SEOs don't spend too much time on, which is kind of I think a shame because for some types of activities, people search with images quite actively. So it's really something to kind of think about. How do you want people to come to your website, and how might they search with images for your website?
I also have an image question.
Okay.
What about the size of images? Because we have discussions with designers that you have really high resolution pictures on big screens. And then we do it automatically smaller for the mobile. Does Google realize the different sizes, or yeah?
Yeah, we try to recognize the different sizes. And we can understand that the same image is available in different sizes. Usually we'll try to pick a higher resolution image for image search, just so that we have something nice to show to people. but that doesn't mean that you need like gigantic sized images. More like for a larger sized user, kind of that size image, and not something where like you have to deliver the original file. So anything crazy.
What about Xrobot tags to no index images? Because we have the case that we have also multiple versions of the image, and we want to make sure that we don't get in trouble for legal cases if we must delete. So we want to make sure that just the version we allow is in Google search. Would you recommend to do it with something like this, or?
I don't know if we would use that. It's a good question. So usually what I'd recommend is using robots text to just block the other versions.
Yeah.
Especially if you have like different sizes and different folders or different URL patterns, maybe that's easily recognizable. But I don't know if we would use Xrobots tags for that.
But you would respect it, or?
I don't know how images would process that. Because we primarily use the Xrobots tag for web pages.
Okay.
So
let's see. I think it's somewhere implemented in our case. When I check.
I mean, maybe it works. It's just the first time I've heard of people trying to use it like that. I know it works for other things that end up in the normal web search results, like PDFs, where you can use Xrobots tag header or the canonical header, but I don't know how that would work with images.
So you would recommend the robots.txt?
Yeah.
Okay, but the robots.txt is just like saying like don't crawl it.
Yeah.
But does it also then say don't index it?
Well, for images, we can't show anything if we can't crawl it.
Oh.
Like for web pages, we can guess and say like this is like a title that we found from links, but for images, like we can't guess based on the anchor text to the image. Like, you have an alt text that says like a picture of a beach with a boat, and it's like, okay, you can't really guess what it might look like. Yeah. Cool.
I would have a question about the Google Cache.
Okay.
We have noticed that since we moved to React, our category pages show an error in the Google Cache after about 2 seconds. So first they display the page, and then after 2 seconds an error page. And is this a problem for Google? Our devs thinks this is due to our phishing protection.
I suspect it's something with JavaScript on your side, because if the page loads initially, then that means the cache version is okay. And we can run some kind of JavaScript on the cache page if it's within the cache page. So probably that JavaScript is running, and for whatever reason, you're picking that up and saying, like, turning it into an error page.
Sounds like the phishing protection kicks in if you have something like that.
Yeah, maybe something like that. I don't think for search it would be a problem, because if we can render the pages and get the content, that's fine. But I don't know. It might still be worth looking at and trying to fix.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
But in general, also with JavaScript sites, the cache version is the static HTML version that you give us. So if the whole page is built on JavaScript, then we might not be able to show that in the cache anymore. Okay. Maybe we can move to some questions from you all here.
John, yeah, so my question is basically changing a page. So if I have an affiliate page, I noticed that if I do a minor change on a page, say add a few things to a product, I noticed that I have a drop on ranking, but it comes back up. However, I do want to change our entire product as it's no longer best. I'm concerned if my page will go to the second page because of that. does Google reevaluates the links that are coming to that page after the page is changed slightly or significantly? Does Google reevaluates the links that are coming to that page?
So much echo. Maybe I should mute ourselves while other people are speaking. Okay. In general, what happens when you change the content of the page, we will try to reprocess the page and re-index the page. And sometimes that does mean that we have to reevaluate how we rank the page. But it's not the case that we would move any existing pages just to page 2 or drop them in ranking just because they changed. We're just trying to understand what has changed on this page and index it in that way. One thing to maybe watch out for is if you're also changing the URLs on these pages. So if you're moving things around, if instead of updating the existing page, you move it to a different location, then that does mean that we have to reevaluate everything. And then you will definitely see some at least temporary changes in ranking.
Can I jump in? Because I had actually the exactly same question,
Sure.
more or less. So let's say you have an established page that has been ranking for several years in first, second page, and then you decide to overhaul and improve the whole content of that page. Like you go from 1,000 to 2,000 or 3,000 words, add videos, do everything better. So it's my understanding that the re-evaluation will take place, and I heard from friends that they lost a lot of rankings when they did exactly that. So would your suggestion be to better add the new content step by step? Or what's your take on this? To not run into an evaluation and lose rankings for some time?
I mean, usually the idea is not that we drop a page in ranking just because it gets updated. Usually it's more a matter of the new page is different and the new content is, like, we try to take that into account. So that's something where if you improve things for search, if you work with clearer structure, add headings and alt text on images, all of those things, then you should see it go up. Mm-hmm. So it's not the case that every change that we see on a site means that we will kind of drop it in ranking first until we have it understood. So it should be something where if you're making changes, you can see positive effects, you can see negative effects depending on what you change.
But it's not like you start from zero again.
No, no. If it's the same URL, if it's the same page, then we start with the same basis. And we say, well, there's new content here. We have to see how we can work with this new content. And that's kind of normal. Like a lot of pages change over time.
And what's the difference if you try to do the change step by step, if you add small chunks of new content step by step to avoid re-evaluation? Is there any difference in the outcome at the end?
No, that shouldn't be. Yeah. So it's not something that you can really avoid because every time we recrawl those pages, there's small subtle changes anyway. So we have to reprocess it every time we recrawl it. Even if it's small changes, even if it's just the date on the page that has changed, it's a new page. We have to figure out how to rank it now. But it's not that we throw away all of the old signals and start over. It's more that the content has changed. We can take some of the signals and keep them, and some of them are based on the content, and we have to work with those again.
But why does it drop in rankings sometime or oftentimes?
I think that's really just a matter of us understanding the page. That's like sometimes we think a page isn't as relevant anymore as it once was, and sometimes we think a page is better than it was before. So that can happen too. So usually my recommendation there is to say that to not artificially slow things down, because if you're improving the content, if you're making the page better, then why would you kind of hold that back and not show it to search engines or not show it to users, but rather make those changes? And if there is a temporary drop, then that's something maybe you have to wait it out and see what happens. Maybe it's also a sign that the changes you made maybe weren't that good for SEO things. Mm-hmm. So that's something where sometimes it makes sense to do it step by step so that you can recognize this fairly quickly. especially if you're changing a big website. If you change the whole website at once and it goes down in search, then it's like a lot of work to figure out what happened, what went wrong. But if you take maybe 10 or 20 pages and you change those and you see, oh, this worked and this one didn't work, then you can kind of improve things until you're finished.
So continuing on that question, if I do, so my problem is I use the theme on this blog. Basically, the theme is open content on the home page, and then 1, 2, 3 pages. You understand what I'm saying? Like open, I got a blog, and that basically shows the whole thing on the home page. And then it triggers down to other pages. Now the problem is, if I want to change the entire theme of the website, would that have an effect to my entire ranking?
Okay, so changing the theme of the website, sure, that can have an effect on the ranking as well. Most of the time, the change that you would see there if you change the theme is all of the internal links are suddenly different as well. So maybe you have a lot of internal links in the menu on the side, and with the new theme, you just have a smaller set of internal links or related topics that are on the bottom of the page. Maybe you have more or less of that. So that's something where if you change the theme of the site, then all of those internal links can theoretically change. And that can definitely have an effect on how we crawl and index the site.
So basically, the site that I defined, open blocks scenario, is that okay with Google having that type of layout? Because right now it's ranking, and I don't see a problem, but I think there's more potential for it to rank. I think for some reason Google is holding, because I've tested many different type of websites, and it's the same amount of link power. It's not getting the same amount of result.
I don't know. I think that's always hard to say what kind of the potential is of a website, because that depends a lot also on the general niche that it's active in. If it's very competitive, then even with the same website that might work really well elsewhere, that might be really hard. So that's really hard to say.
Okay. Second question, that'll be my last, hopefully. Topic variation on an affiliate website. So if I'm talking about best of kitchen stuff, and then I want to talk about best of living products, how much variation can I go? I mean, I remember seeing Matt Cutt's blog post about health and how important that is, and I greatly appreciate that. Like radiology and those topics are, they're health related, and they need to be provided to users with great integrity. I mean, if I'm putting up products about living room and they're to help you with anxiety, would that go into a health? And I mean, it is an affiliate product line. But would that become a problem, and would I have an issue with that?
I don't know. It's hard to say. It sounds like you're headed in that direction if you're trying to position your website as like, I don't know, interior design specifically for certain kinds of health issues, and you're kind of headed in that direction where if you want people to take you seriously about your input on health issues, then maybe you need to position yourself as like actually being serious about these and not just randomly providing other things in there as well.
I appreciate that, and that's exactly what we're doing. But I wanted to make sure before I jump into that scenario, I'm fully prepared, and that I'm not going to get penalized because I put out something that's against Google's policy.
Yeah. So I wouldn't see that as something where we would have a manual action on a website because of that. So kind of the traditional penalty situation, that doesn't sound like that. The penalties mostly apply specifically to the Webmaster Guidelines. And I think what you're headed into is more around kind of the general quality and how we think a website is relevant for these specific search results. And for that, there's a very broad spectrum available. So it's not that we would penalize a website for having a certain mix of topics.
Thanks, John. John, I would appreciate if you can drop your email in the chat box. I wanted to share some website with you.
Okay.
Thanks.
John, can I ask a follow-up question on that around where, as well as changing content, you're also changing a domain? So we've got, I've got a client at the moment, a big retail company who have also got a services arm, and they've got two separate websites for retail and services. They want to amalgamate them both under the retail domain effectively. The services site ranks really well, and they want to sort of shift it as effectively they're sort of going under a single brand and a single domain. What does Google see as sort of most important? Is it the content? Is it going to be how they structure the incorporation of the services site within the retail site? Obviously, we're going to be doing 301 redirects from the existing site over to the new one, etc. But where should we be sort of looking to concentrate the efforts to make sure that we don't suffer too much of a drop?
So I guess what I would focus on there primarily is to make sure from a technical point of view that you're really kind of putting things together in the right way. In particular, when you're merging sites like this, you would expect to see some drop in search because we can't just take the two sites and add them up and use that as a signal. We essentially have to reprocess everything and look at the new site the way it is. So to make sure that that works optimally, I would really work hard to make sure that from a technical point of view, you're doing everything you can to redirect pages on a one-by-one level to the new versions, and that you're not blocking anything from being crawled or being indexed in the sense that if it was indexable in the old site, that it should be indexable in the new site. So there, I would assume from a content point of view, you're probably covered. But from a technical point of view, a lot of these small redirects sometimes get lost. And that makes it harder for us to really combine all of those signals.
Where you've got a site with, so these sites have got a lot of pages, can we adopt a sort of triaging approach to the redirects? So going for the priority high level category pages first, and then working our way down into the lower level pages.
I think that would make sense, but I would try to use tools as much as possible to really get the broad coverage.
Yeah,
so
sure.
You're really sure that everything is properly moved over.
Okay, thanks.
Cool. Okay, let me take maybe a question or two that were submitted. So that they have a chance to. If a web page mentions your brand but doesn't actually link to your website, would that count as a positive signal? So, I mean, we would pick that up as a mention on another website, but it's not a link. It doesn't pass any PageRank, so it's kind of not really the same thing as a link. I've noticed our AppSpot staging versions are showing up as backlinks to our site. Do you think this is an issue? Should we disavow appspot.com? You don't need to disavow appspot.com. If that's your staging site, you don't need to disavow those links. But it does sound like we're maybe indexing your staging site, which probably you don't want to have happen. I've seen lots of weird problems come up when that happens. So I'd recommend blocking that in whatever way works best for you, which could even be blocking it by user agent if you can do that, or blocking it by robots text in the worst case, so that it doesn't get indexed there. What's the correct way to use breadcrumbs from an SEO point of view? So home category item or home tag item? both of these could work. That's essentially up to you, how you want to structure your website, how you want people to navigate through your website. Do search suggest queries include voice queries done via voice search, Google Home, and Google Assistant? I don't know. I don't think so, but I don't know. Any of you guys know? Yeah, I think a lot of the voice search questions and kind of the queries that come through Assistant, it's probably still something where people are working on to see how it ends up working in the long run. It's also something from the Search Console side. We're looking into how we can show that in Search Console, but it's kind of tricky because we don't really have a search results page when you ask something and Assistant gives you an answer, like based on this website, this is the answer. How do you best show that in Search Console so that it's still useful? All right, bunch of questions. How do I redirect pagination from an old website to a new one? Kind of similar to before, you wouldn't really need to look into the type of pagination or what's happening there, but rather try to redirect as much as possible on a one-by-one basis. Would it be best to no-index PDFs that have the same content as the website? Maybe. I think that's kind of up to you if you want to have these PDFs indexed or not. For some websites, it makes sense to have PDFs indexed. For others, maybe less so. I would look into how users are using those PDFs. Let's see. Let me just grab a few more. We're currently using Google Tag Manager for structured data. Is that OK or not? Kind of simplifying the question. Yes. It's OK, but I think what you need to keep in mind is that the Tag Manager needs to be run by JavaScript, so it only works when we can render your pages, which also means that there's sometimes a delay between when we pick up your page and when we process the JavaScript and render the pages and are able to pull out the structured data with the Tag Manager. So that's one thing to keep in mind, in that there's a bit of a delay there. The other thing is that you're adding quite a bit of complexity for just a few snippets of JavaScript that you're injecting into your pages, which means things can go wrong along the way, and you might not necessarily notice it when you're looking at those web pages. So that's something where I would recommend, if at all possible, try to get the structured data directly into the pages. So that it's a lot easier to diagnose when things go wrong, when things break, and to fix them early on. Then speakable structured data, is there a time frame when it's coming outside of the US? I don't know. A lot of times we test it on the US market, probably because we have a lot of people in the US, but also because maybe they like to try stuff out. And if it works out there, then usually we end up rolling that out to other countries and other languages. With speakable markup, maybe it's also a matter of being able to understand that and being sure that the quality of this content is OK. So what I would recommend there is to implement it on your pages and kind of be ready for when it does roll out for other countries. If we ignore manual actions, what will happen? That doesn't sound like a particularly good strategy, I think. So manual actions are done from the web spam team when they see something significantly wrong that they feel they need to manually fix that. So if you don't fix those issues, then those issues will remain, and that manual action will remain, and whatever that manual action does will kind of persist. So these manual actions do expire at some point, but we're talking more about order of years rather than weeks or anything like that. So if you want to wait out a manual action for a couple of years, then that's your decision, but probably not a good short-term one. So I personally recommend taking these into account and taking them as feedback and fixing them and doing the reconsideration. I mean, if your website isn't meant to be shown in search, then maybe you don't care about manual actions. Like if you're just trying to do ads, landing pages, then maybe that's fine. Subdomain or subfolder? I'm not going to answer that. Sorry. International SEO. At the moment, some of our page titles in the US, Germany, and other countries have Southern Africa added to the end of the title tag. Southern Africa is shown in the search results, and it looks like people aren't clicking. We have the page title, hreflang, and international targeting set. What could be happening here? So I'd recommend maybe posting this in the help forum and ideally sending me a link. You can drop it in the Google Plus post for this event, and I can take a look there. What might be happening here is that for some reason we think, at least for a part of your website, Southern Africa is kind of a site title type thing, and that's why we're adding it to these pages. Usually that's more a sign that something with your site structure isn't right, where it looks to us that Southern Africa is really a site title. And that might be with the URL structure, with internal linking, those kind of things might be something weird. OK, wow, more and more questions. Maybe we'll just go back to here for the moment, if you have anything.
I have a question about personalization, because our plan as a publisher is to personalize the whole homepage for every cookie. So every user will be targeted by interest profiles and stuff we have, and then we will show something. And in one scenario, we will hide all the articles a user already read. So we have to do cloaking, I guess. So, and what's your idea how to handle Googlebot in this scenario?
So the easy part is Googlebot doesn't keep a cookie.
Okay.
So that might make it a little bit easier. And in general, personalization is something you can do if you want to do that. It's not something we would see as cloaking, especially if you've recognized that it's a repeat visitor. If they're logged in or not, I think that's totally up to you. The important part for us is that from a general point of view, the content is equivalent. So I think this would primarily affect things like the home pages, category pages, maybe. If we still see those as category pages, as home pages for your website that lead to the rest of your website, then that's not something we would worry about. If the individual article pages also change significantly, like someone clicks on an article, I don't know, about Christmas, and they end up on an article about Easter, then that would be bad. That would be the kind of thing where we'd say, OK, the user is being misled. But if they're like searching for, I don't know, sporting events, and they land on your sporting events site, and that page is personalized for them, that's perfectly fine.
Yeah, the biggest problem is probably the homepage, because this can really be completely different. If we see that a user is interested in sport, then we will probably show 80% of the stuff is sport, and for the other one, it will be economy news or something.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
totally up to you. That's something where you have to work with your users to find the right balance. But from our point of view, people would be going to your homepage because they're kind of searching for your brand or for general, maybe Swiss news, and they go to your homepage. And then your homepage is still relevant, even if it has different content there. I think, especially for news sites, that kind of change happens naturally anyway. We crawl it at one point, and we see this collection of articles. The user goes there. There's a different collection because things have changed. And that's kind of normal.
Okay, John, can I ask another question? We had a massive drop in really important indexed sites, and these are highly individual and unique pages. They are our regional category pages, like wine tasting in Munich and wine tasting in Hamburg. And then I looked at Search Console and I saw that these pages were excluded and dropped from the index because Google says they are duplicate and the submitted URL is not selected as canonical, and instead another one. But the problem is that the Munich page suddenly seems to be identified as a duplicate of another city page like Cologne. And these pages are really unique and have individual content and individual links, and the events on them are in these cities. So there's actually no way of confusing them. So I don't really understand what's happening there. And we do have individual sitemaps for each store. And we use rel canonical and do put self-referencing canonicals on each page. And the content is highly individual. So I don't understand what's happening here.
Okay. So usually this happens when we think that a part of your site is duplicated. So kind of like how you saw. And it's not always the case that we look at the content and say, oh, the content is exactly the same. But sometimes the case that we look at the URL structure and we see maybe the city name is, I don't know, a URL parameter, and you can enter any kind of word as this URL parameter and still get one of those cities, then we might decide that maybe this URL parameter is irrelevant, that it's not necessary for determining the content on the page. So that's kind of one place where this could be coming from. It could also be that maybe for some cities, you're showing the same content. So for example, if there are cities that are right next to each other, maybe you show the same content because maybe the events are the same for these two locations. And that might be confusing us. So what I would do there is double check to make sure that the difference that you have between the individual locations is really clear, that the URLs are such that when you enter an invalid city name, that you show a 404 page instead of picking another city, and kind of making sure that for us it's really clear that these parameters or the path or whatever you're using for that is really always leading to a unique, different page.
Yeah, this is what we do, in fact. So we use speaking URLs, and these pages were identified. This only happened some weeks ago, and before that, Google didn't seem to have a problem with these pages. And we have speaking URLs, and the cities are not closely connected. Like Munich is not really close to Hamburg, and the content on these pages is really highly different. So I don't understand how this can be confused.
Okay, maybe you can send me some example URLs, or if you have a thread in the help forum with the example URLs, maybe drop that into the Google Plus comments, and I can take a look at that with the team. Because that is something that the team does care about, to figure out where we fold things together properly and where we shouldn't.
Okay.
And sometimes we get that wrong.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Well,
yeah.
If nobody has
Go for it.
It's more general a question regarding single-page applications. Yeah, it's just approximately. When do you think Google will be able to read client-side rendered website completely with a first crawl? For example, there is no href tag anymore in the source code, so that SEOs don't have to bother the front-end devs anymore.
Right. So we are working right now, as we speak, on getting rendering and crawling better integrated and indexing as well, so like that everything moves a little closer together. I can't give you a timeline on that. It's work in progress. We also try to improve rendering to begin with, because if you ask, like, can you render or can you index single-page applications? Yes, we can do that today. And the rendering gap is not always as big as people think, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. The problem is that the client-side rendering also influences how quickly we can queue things for crawling. So the crawl budget plus the rendering delay is something that is really hard to spot from the outside. So you only see like, oh, my page takes a day or 2 or 3 to be indexed. that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a rendering issue. It might be a crawl budget issue. It's a tricky one to figure out. I've seen that a few times now. And even though that's an issue that we understand, it might take a while for us to like bring things closer together. So for the time being, if you really care about frequently changing content and large sites with lots of frequently changing content, I would still recommend dynamic rendering. That's not something that's going to pop and disappear in like a month or so. We are working on improving it. It's going to take a while. I'm not going to give you a timeline.
Okay, because if you would have said how you would wait for that.
No. Yeah, I think especially if you have a website that has a lot of content, you should really be using dynamic rendering or server-side rendering in general. I also just today saw that there was a blog post from Bing a few months back that they were also saying use dynamic rendering for things like that. So I'd really kind of invest in that direction. And like Martin mentioned, it's not going to go away. So social media sites, also if you want to share things there, if you want people to share a URL on WhatsApp, then it also needs to be pre-rendered for that.
If you have the engineering resources, though, I would highly recommend looking into server-side rendering or even better hybrid rendering, because that yields user experience benefits as well. Because you basically ship the critical content in the first go to your user, and then you enhance it with JavaScript to bring the single-page application experience on top of it. So you get the benefits of dynamic rendering, but you also get user experience benefits, and things are appearing faster, especially on mobile. So
thanks for the science. Very good.
Yeah. But if you can't, or if you don't want to gamble the engineering resources, then dynamic rendering is a really good idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for this question.
Welcome.
Let me take some more that were submitted, and then we can go more to here or to the folks on the Hangout. Our company recently moved, and the road our building is located on is not properly mapped on Google Maps. When I try to upload the listing, it changes the street from way to road. We submitted feedback through Google Maps. Is there any other way to get that fixed? Probably you would need to go through Google Maps, but I don't really know everything around Google Maps, so I would perhaps post in the help forum about this. The times where I've had to get something fixed in Google Maps have usually been really quick, and they give a lot of feedback. So maybe that's fixed in the meantime. How do I remove a site that's scraping my content and cloaking it to Google? Let's see. I submitted some DMCA takedowns and was asked to do it on a per-page basis, but there's so many pages. What can we do there? So DMCA is probably the best approach here, and it is on a per-page basis. So there's not really something I can do to take that away from you. That's kind of the legal process in general for situations like this. Let's see. What's the max size of an HD access file? We have a lot of redirects. I think this depends on your server configuration, but you can also use things like regular expressions to simplify these files. With making topic categories within blog content that mimics the core website's product category be a good idea. Totally up to you. You can do that if you want. If that works for you, then go for it. If it confuses users, maybe pick something different. Can you analyze the issue for my website? My website got a manual action for spammy structured data. And there's some sample URLs. What I would do here is post in the Webmaster Help Forum with that, because sometimes the spammy structured data issues are a bit tricky to diagnose, and sometimes it takes some help from other people to figure out which direction you should be going. I have a website that lists local businesses together with user-provided reviews. Sometimes we have, really large JSON LD snippets, over 100 kilobytes, because of all the reviews. Is there a limit on the number of items? Is it OK to just include a few of the reviews? I don't know about a limit on the number of items, but 100 kilobytes for JSON LD snippet seems excessive. So I would look into finding ways to just paginate these review pages somehow, rather than trying to include everything on one single page. All right, 2 more questions. We can do it. Private membership websites that has a lot of unique content that's limited, but someone goes off and copies it and publishes it. What can we do? I think first off, you probably need to look into whatever normal legal approaches that you can take there, which might include the DMCA. But from a web search point of view, we don't know where this content is coming from if we can't crawl it. So there's not really much that we can do on a web search side. It's more something that you'd need to resolve amongst each other directly. We're working with a healthcare group, multiple primary care locations. When creating content for each, we're attempting to concentrate on each of the locations' unique services. How does Google view this in differentiating healthcare service locations for search? I think that's fine. If you have different locations and if they're unique in their own ways and you have content for that, that seems to be a good fit. All right. I think there was a question here from one of you all that I just saw pop up briefly, but I don't know. Let's see. They're here. The spammy structured data markup. I think we talked about that. Yeah. OK. OK. If you have any more questions, now is your chance.
Well, John, I don't think my question was answered regarding the changing of theme. For example, you said if I were to maintain all the existing internal link structure on the new theme, but the HTML would change, would that have an effect, or is the HTML having the effect on the overall ranking, or is the combined HTML and the anchor text or the link structure?
Yeah, that's a combination of both of them. It's something where the theme change, it can just be a matter of changing the design. If just the CSS changes and the HTML is the same, then probably that would be pretty non-issue. Like probably not much would change there. But if the HTML changes as well, then you could imagine things like the headings on the page being marked up with just bold versus marked up as a heading. And those kind of differences can play a role in how we evaluate a page. So if you're changing the HTML significantly, then that could affect how we rank those pages. I mean, it could also affect it in a positive way. So it's not always that things will go down. But if you improve things, then that's good for you, too.
Got it. I think that makes more sense. Yeah. Thanks.
Cool. Any more questions from you all here?
Yes, maybe about the progressive web ads. Yeah. How sure are you that they will push through in the next time?
What do you mean by push through?
Maybe replace the native apps, or
that's a prediction I would not want to make. It's one of these predictions where I end up saying something like nobody needs more than 64 kilobyte of RAM. That's quite a sweeping statement. I think what we see already today is that a lot of partners have fantastic successes with switching to PWAs, such as Starbucks has higher engagement rates, has higher conversion rates. Flipkart had successful metrics. I don't have the exact numbers in my head, but there's like a bunch of case studies that prove that PWAs improve or increase engagement and conversion rates. Sometimes really significantly. I think Starbucks had like double-digit % increase in engagement and day over day or something. So I would say they are already successful. We are seeing more and more partners looking into them, and so far haven't heard bad things about it. I think there is still things to be desired in terms of integration in the operating systems. I know that we're working on that. There's the Fugu project that we announced at Chrome Dev Summit this year, where we are basically working to improve the capabilities that the web provides with, so that we are basically trying to close the gap between native application capabilities and web capabilities. But with what we've already got today, we see significant successes with the partners that are implementing it. So that's helping, definitely. And I guess it's an upward trajectory, but predicting the future is bound to be risky. Also, I had a look regarding, someone of you asked regarding the X robots tag header in images. We do respect that.
Oh, okay.
It's good to know. For resources,
Good.
we do respect that.
Okay, cool. And there's a question here in the chat. How long will Google, how long will it take, I think, when we fix a manual action? So usually that needs to be processed manually, because it's a manual action. So someone needs to take a look at that and review the changes that you've done. And usually you get a reply back within about a week or two. So if you fix these issues, then I would go ahead and submit the reconsideration request. And usually within about a week or two, you should have an answer there with regards to, yes, it was OK, we will resolve this manual action, or no, there are still issues here. Sometimes, depending on the manual action, it can also be that we see you fixed a lot of this, but you haven't fixed everything, so we will reduce the scope of the manual action. With structured data, that might be a bit trickier. Let's see, another one about internal links and backlinks, whether Google has the same PageRank recipe. I don't know, how we calculate the PageRank, but usually it's not something that sites really need to worry about. So if you need to figure out the details of how PageRank calculations work, then maybe you need to work at Google to get all of those details. Because, I mean, we don't show PageRank externally anywhere. There's no toolbar that shows it, so it's kind of a theoretical question. How can we ask for reconsideration? That's within Search Console, where you see the manual actions, you can submit reconsideration requests. It's fine to do multiple of these if you're working on a problem and you're trying to resolve it. On the other hand, if we see that you're just going back and forth and fixing things and getting manual action again, then kind of moving things, trying things back and forth, then it might be that the web spam team says, OK, they're just toying with us. We will ignore their reconsideration request for a while, or kind of stop them from submitting more of them. So I would see this as something where you really try to fix the problem, do the reconsideration, and react based on the feedback there. I would also get help from the Webmaster Forum if you're not sure about what exactly you should be fixing there. Because a lot of these issues, you're not the first one to run into this problem. And people in the forums, they have practice with this. So I definitely get help. All right. Any last questions from you all?
I have a question about, there is structured data called carousel. And I just see these for recipes until now. Is it planned to have it for other types? So is it a good idea, for example, to go for, if we have a tag page for a celebrity, to add articles about the celebrity into this carousel, and maybe we will get not just the general information about the celebrity, but we can also offer articles below as a carousel?
I don't know. I mean, it's kind of you're making a bet that this will happen. So I
just
can't
see
say
recipes. So in the documentation, it's not mentioned as just be exclusive for recipes. So
yeah, I could see it being expanded over time, but I think from a practical point of view, you as someone who's working on the site would have to make that decision and say, well, I believe in the future this will happen and we will be prepared. But you have to know that maybe it doesn't happen. It's kind of a bet that you'd have to take on your side. And maybe it's just minimal amount of work to add that. So it might be worth just doing it if it's easy enough. But if it's a lot of work and Google doesn't support it at the moment, then it's, I don't know if that's the best use of the time.
Maybe start with the personal recipes of the celebrities.
Yeah, that might be an interesting mix. You could rank for both recipes, like Christmas cookies from I don't know who. Yeah, cool. Yeah. Any other questions from you all? Not for the moment.
Hey, John. Since I got asked, the update that Google had in August, September, and trickled down in October, some sites had ghost effect of links. I'm still seeing sites that are using the same techniques and ranking. However, they've changed a little bit of a strategy because I guess I can tell how Google picked up those strategy, and the other sites are using that strategy with the bit of different technique. Is there more to expect from Google on this? Because it's not fair for sites that are ranking with proper outreach and with white hat links, I would call them, and those are gray hat links. And they're excelling with, if they get one link, it could be equivalent to 100 links that we may have. So it's not really fair for, you know, working out 100 links or trying to get 100 links to a page, and somebody just puts one and breaks it for you.
I'm not sure what specifically you're referring to, so it's kind of hard to say. In general, if you see sites doing things that are against the Webmaster guidelines, like, feel free to send us spam reports. We really appreciate those. If you're seeing bigger scale things that are hard to report, you can also send those to me directly, and I can pass those on to the team.
Sorry, that's why I was asking for your email.
I would just post it in the Google Plus comment, and then I can pick it up there. Let me see. I can put it here too.
I've seen sites that are, you know, within a month or two, they've from 300, less than 1,000 to 1 million traffic on an auction domain. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Okay. So like an expired domain type thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, those are always interesting for the website team. So if you have some examples, they like looking at that. And it's not so much a matter of us taking these examples and saying, oh, this one specific site is doing something wrong, but rather taking those and saying, well, this might be a general problem, and we might be able to recognize this better on a broad scope with help from some examples. So that's something where we try, from a web spam point of view, not to focus too much on individual URLs, but rather try to figure out what kind of is the system behind this, so that we cover all of these cases rather than just picking that one specific one out.
Okay.
All right. Let's take a break here. It's been great having you all here, and thank you for traveling over here to visit us. I don't think we have any others planned for the rest of the year, so I guess we'll see you all maybe next year.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Enjoy the winter or the summer, depending on where you're located. If you have summer, that's not nice. Enjoy.
I would like summer.
Yeah. All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Happy holidays.
Thanks.